right, so we've got a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Andy here. Andy, you're somebody who has been part of an incredible family that has changed the way that chocolate, sweets, that entire industry is consumed by people. Your family created an incredible combination of peanut butter and chocolate that has been beloved by millions and millions of people, and now has incredible scale all around the world. And the iconic orange and yellow together has become such a great combination. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story and your family story.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me to this little get together, and hopefully I can answer all your questions that you might ask. Obviously, through the years, I've gotten a lot of questions from people about the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and how it all came to be.
Yeah. Well, just kind of the first question I have is, how did this start, this interest of putting peanut butter and chocolate together? Like, I'd love to just understand the family business and, how this idea even originated.
Yeah, so I did write a book just to kind of get that out there, a book called Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, The Untold Story. And I would just kind of set little timelines. My grandfather was born in 1879, and he had lived down a place called Muddy Creek Forks, Frosty Hill Farm down in that area in Pennsylvania. And he lived there for a while. And around, I think it was 1916, he saw an advertisement from Milton Hershey, who was looking for some people to work in his dairy operations. My grandfather had a lot of experience working in dairy operations. He had dairy cows and all kinds of farmland and various things. So he went up there and he applied, and they gave him a job working at one of the barns called 28A. And then eventually he went to work further on down the road in a barn called the Round Barn, which was experimental, where Milton Hershey was learning to make milk chocolate,
Ah,
trying to perfect the methods for doing that. And so around 2017, he did some things, but ended up starting his own companies, R&R Candy Company, the Spear Confectionery Candy Company, and then around 1923, he started the HB Reese Candy Company. When he had lived with his mother down in Muddy Creeks, they had done some things with raisins and dates and covered it with chocolate. And so they were making little candies down there. So when he started his candy companies, he started making ones with raisins and dates and chocolate covered and so forth. That was the thing that they were doing back then. And but the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup itself didn't come out till 1928. So he had a number of candy bars that he had put together, such as mints and various things. And he had 16 children, 16. And so he had a lot of mouths to feed, but he also had a lot of people that he could put out on the street to go sell the product. So one of my uncles, my uncle Ralph Reese, he basically would go down to the Hershey plant. He would stand outside their front door and actually sell mints. And he even sold them to Milton Hershey, who would come along once in a while and would buy them from the kids.
ah.
But he ended up kind of making peanut butter in a little ball, and then he would just take and dip that in chocolate and wrap it in tin foil, and that tasted really good. And he had gone down to a few stores in the local area, and people were having problems with some of the candies that they were getting. They liked the peanut butter and chocolate combination. So, long story short, he ended up creating the peanut butter cups. The peanut butter cup itself became a iconic uh, candy bar in that it had a cup shape to it.
Mhm.
And that's because back then they didn't have air conditioning. Everything was nice and hot. And so if it was summertime, that chocolate would melt and it
Mm.
would lose its form factor. So by having that cup, it would always maintain that original form factor and re-solidify. And so that became the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And it also became part of the automation process. It was something that was easy for them to manufacture. It used to be they had to do everything all by hand. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah. So how would it survive in the summer though? It wasn't really a summer thing, or was it?
Well, I think even Milton Hershey had problems with candy in the summertime. So what they would do is they would switch operations and move away from making candy, and they would move to processing beans, like green beans. He also had a father-in-law because my grandfather married Blanche Edna Hyson, and her father had a grocery store, and he also had some fisheries and canning operations down in Virginia. He had other operations up in Pennsylvania, and so my grandfather went in there and learned about plant operations and so forth. Uh, and so during the summer times, a lot of migrant workers and so forth, they would have them go out there and collect up the beans, and they would take and pull that together and go sell it.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that's quite a pivot they had to do to make
Yeah.
the business work.
Yeah, so you think about all the machineries back then, the technology wasn't fully automated, but it was the industrial age, and everybody was getting into the manufacturing and gearing up for various things. You had World War One that had finished back in 1917, 1919 timeframe. Then you had the Great Depression, and then, of course, in 1945, you had the World War II stuff going on and everything. And Milton Hershey had in part of his process of doing things, he was trying to control his costs. And so he started to purchase some sugarcane organizations and so forth. And he bought a place down in Havana or in Cuba, if you will. And he would have the sugarcane for his sugar operations. And so my grandfather focused on making the peanut butter,
Uh-huh.
but he had Milton Hershey who had the milk chocolate. Now, he could have probably gotten chocolate from any number of places, but hey, he had hooked up a relationship with Milton Hershey, as well as another candy company called M&M,
Ah,
Murray's and Mars. Okay. So you had the two big companies, Murray and Mars, some of the family members in that one had worked with Milton Hershey. And so when they went out and started Murray and Mars, M&Ms and everything, Mars Company, they took and leveraged that relationship with Hershey for the chocolate. And so Reese's and Mars became the two biggest purchasers of chocolate. Uh, but it was 16 kids. You had John Reese. Gosh, when he was 6 years old, he dropped out of school to go work for my grandfather and became one of the primary people. Became president of the HB Reese Candy Company eventually, and very astute to doing operations and so on. As time went on, my father, Charles Richard Reese, who was the youngest of 16 kids and also a twin, by the way, he ended up taking over operations. And so he dealt with automating the plant with new modern equipment and so on. And we built this new factory. They say that we kind of started out in the basement of our house. That really only started out with doing mints and so forth. That was back in 1917 to 1919 and 23. We started HB Reese Candy Company in 1926. We built our first physical factory at
mm,
203, 205 Caracas Avenue in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And that building still exists today. And
wow.
it's kind of fun because I've gone in there and for someone who knows what it used to look like on the inside and seeing what it is today, it's kind of fun to kind of go through there. In fact, one of the times that I was in there, we walked up and we opened up a wall and I found some old, um, kind of like, oh, like hemp bags that
Mm,
they used to hold the peanut butter, the peanuts, and so forth, right? And so it was kind of cool to have some of the old bags that they of the actual peanuts that they used to get in. I have the actual bags on
huh,
that. I've got
mm,
that kind of in storage because it's not something you want to just leave around the house. It probably get infested or something. But it's kind of cool to kind of look at some of the things they did back in the old days. If you go into my book and you start going through it, you'll see a lot of pictures and things of inside the old plant as well as the new plant and what have you.
mm. When did orange and yellow become the Reese's colors? Like, how did that happen?
Well, I guess you could say, orange is a very happy color. It kind of elicits a lot of good positive thoughts to people. And he started using that probably in a very near the very beginning of the 1928 time frame because I do have some advertisements from 1933 where it shows him with his family members. In that family photo, uh, he actually had all 16 kids, and it was an advertisement. It was the 10-year anniversary, 1933, because they incorporated in 23, so 33 was a 10-year mark. But the photograph was from 1928. And I know that that's when that photograph was taken because that's when my father was born.
No.
He was sitting on my grandfather's lap. He was born in February, and his twin was still alive. And my grandmother was holding his twin. His twin died at 8 months old. So it was still 1928 when that photo was taken. What's amazing is they used that picture in that 10-year advertisement, and I actually have the original photograph itself still here in the family, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So the Reese's orange, it's, as far as I remember, it's been there a long time. Even some of the old boxes where they had the assorted candies and so forth, they had orange colors in there. Even when they had the Christmas, and might have a little red, a little green, and everything. But the orange is, it's very iconic because when you walk into stores today, you look around, you see that orange, people automatically, oh, there's the Reese's. And when you walk down the street, my brother always talks, he likes to dress up in the Reese memorabilia. And people will be smiling. They'll be smiling. And it's kind of like, well, they're not smiling at you, Brad. My brother's name is Brad. They're smiling at the brand. They recognize the brand, and everybody loves the brand Reese's. So it's pretty cool advertising.
Yeah. So he was doing lots of different types of candies, right? And then started to really focus in on Reese's. What made that focus kind of happen? Like why dial in on the chocolate peanut butter cup?
Well, you had the wars that were happening. The Great Depression, we still had all those different candy bars. By 1935, we were able to burn the mortgage. But you had World War II, and there was sugar rationing happening during that time frame. And so the industry as a whole started to consolidate and limit the things that they were manufacturing. And since Milton Hershey had his own sugar plantations, he built the city of Hershey to be a utopia. He also had a utopia in the city down in Cuba. Utopia meaning that everything was all about the business and a place that people would want to be and so forth. So he had all the operations there, and he was able to control his production and the cost of making chocolate, milk chocolate. And so my grandfather just started, buying that from him. And so they decided to just focus on the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. That was the one candy bar that was very easy to automate and focus on, and it became the focus. Now they would do different sizes. You had the little penny, and then the nickel, and the little half. They got pretty big in size. And of course, if you look at what the ingredients were from back in the old days to what it is today, it's might have gone through some modifications to the old family recipe from what we originally had. Even the recipe from 1970s is different than what we had back in the day, and it's also different than what they're currently using. Today you have things in there such as emulsifiers and preservatives and different things. So uh, I don't know, people are more healthy conscious, so they probably prefer some of the older type of ingredients that didn't have any funky chemicals in there. So hopefully
Would
I explained that good.
yeah, you did, Andy. So would you say that just the way like the relationship was with Milton back then, it was a good relationship that your grandfather had with him? Was it a competitive relationship? Was it kind of both? It was this like friendship and competitive, like relationship at that point in time?
Well, Milton Hershey would walk around Hershey. And so it's not like our factory that we had on 203, 205 Caracas Avenue was that far away. This is down a little hill, probably no more than 3 blocks away from his factory. And so he would stop by. They would have coffee and drink and sit out on the patio and swap stories and what have you. But yeah, they were cordial. Uh, I know when people would come visit, one of the buyers for Sears and Roebuck came in one time, and there's stories in there where he handed them a box of Reese's and he says, "Hey, man, you got to try these things. These things are great." And so that sold the Reese's into that. Milton Hershey wasn't worried about the competition
Mm,
because Reese's was buying his chocolate as well as Mars was buying their chocolate from Hershey Company.
mm,
And so it wasn't a thing that he was looking at them as being competition, you know. And he basically didn't have any kids. My grandfather had 16 kids. And so, Milton Hershey eventually ended up creating a school for orphans, a kind of industrial school, if you will, to teach kids about the various, I guess you would call it labor type things that are out there today. People are talking about not going out and getting their degrees and to focus on more physical labor things, doing pipe fitting and auto mechanics and so forth. Well, farming is another one of those things that people can go out and do dairy operations and whatnot. And so he helped all of these kids over the years with his industrial school. And my grandfather raised his kids. And by the way, back in those days after the Depression, there was a lot of people who were hungry. So the hobos would paint these little symbols on the telephone poles
mm.
to kind of indicate what houses would be willing to give you food, might offer you a place to lay down and sleep, a little bit of protection. And my grandfather, he would hire people, bring them in, he would feed them.
Mm.
With 16 kids, they always had plenty of food. Uh, but he helped everybody out, giving them jobs. And I would say that the people who worked at Reese's, you didn't have a union,
Mhm.
whereas Hershey had a union you had to deal with. And people were paid very well at Reese's. They liked working there. It was a sought after company to go work for.
What was the level of scale that he achieved for Reese's? Like, how big was the company?
Well, it was like a hockey puck or a hockey stick, right? How it's got that curve, it's a non-linear slope going up. And so I think Milton Hershey died around 1945 timeframe, right?
Mhm.
My grandfather didn't die till November of 56 in that time frame. And the Reese's was taken off. I think Hershey was kind of on the down slope, is my understanding. And we had other external people helping the family at that time. George McLeese, who was operating the company. We could have just kind of kept the company, but we did what's called a stock for stock merger with the Hershey Company in 1963. And so stock for stock, meaning that we got a lot of stock in the Hershey Company and it became one company. Reese's was now a part of it, even though it was a separate subsidiary
Mhm.
of Hershey. Okay. And, a lot of things started happening. You got to give the Hershey Company a lot of credit for, the things that it has done over the years. One of my cousins, Bobby Reese, ended up becoming an attorney for them, and he did what's called an industry roll-up, where he ended up acquiring a bunch of the companies that existed out there during that time frame of when he was operating in that role. And so he wrote all those companies in. And so, today, my gosh, there might be more than 100 to 150 different candy bars potentially out there
Wow.
that have the Reese brand name and stuff associated with it,
That was
right?
all through acquisitions.
Yeah, I did a lot of acquisitions. In fact, when we did the induction ceremony to induct my grandfather into the Candy Hall of Fame, some of the owners of the other companies that were acquired came over and talked to me and kind of voiced that they were upset that, well, kind of happy, if you will, not really upset, but more happy of the attention that my grandfather got because his legacy was being remembered and was going to continue to be remembered. You know, it was Reese's, like
Yeah.
owned by HB Reese, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, whereas some of these other companies, you know, they didn't have that possessive type name to it. And so you don't know anything about who founded those companies. They've gone by the wayside, but
Right.
everybody still knows who HB Reese is. It's pretty amazing.
What were some of those companies? They were just different forms of chocolates or stuff that became Reese's, like different versions of it.
Well, it's probably not for me to kind of go in there and go into the details. You know, uh, Ludens and various candies like that
Mm.
had moved over. I mean, you can go and you can see all kinds of candies. They even manufacture some of the candies for some of the well-known candy companies that are out there, such as the Kit Kat bar.
Yeah.
You and I had talked about that in a prior conversation. Uh, my father and mother had some family friends called the Shells, and Camille Shell used to run the production line for the Kit Kat.
Hmm.
And I actually remember when they came out with the Kit Kat being manufactured there. Camille came down. We kind of consider her like an aunt, but she wasn't really an aunt. But she'd come down and she had these 30-gallon garbage bags filled totally with Kit Kat bars. Now, just the silver wrapping, not the red Kit Kat wrapper on, just the silver cover on it. And imagine two 30-gallon garbage bags like that coming to our door. You know, hey, I brought these down. I want you kids to try it. Let us know what you think of it. And of course, we ate it all. But I remember as a kid going into the factory, they had these bread pan looking, size of a tub, like a bathtub size, right? But it looked like a bread pan. In fact, in some of the pictures I have in the book, you'll see these great big tubs that look like bread pans, and they'd fill it with rejects. And we'd go in there for our shirts, and I'd dip my shirt in there and literally have hundreds and hundreds of peanut butter cups in there. And we would drive home, which was not that far away from the factory, and us kids would have all the peanut butter cups eaten by the time we got home. Now, think about it. We had to be bouncing off the walls, right? You had to be bouncing off the walls. But yeah, it's kind of fun to go into the factories and see things. And I know one of my cousins, he ate so many peanut butter cups, his teeth all rotted out. You know, of course, those were his baby teeth, and so he got new teeth to come in. Lucky him, right? He had some new teeth to deal with it. Uh, but yeah, it's kind of a neat family story. With the 16 kids, our father being the youngest of the 16. By the time I started growing up, I used to hear all these stories and whatnot about the candy business and how it all came to be. But no one wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
And so I did. I'm the youngest of the youngest Reese's. And so I wrote a book on it. I put it together in 2008. I published it. The Hershey Corporation came in, asked me to bring a bunch of books down, brought in the entire executive team from Hershey, and they asked me to train them. They brought them into the Hershey library, brought in the whole team, sat them down, gave them each a book. Oh, by the way, you can probably see the book back
Yep.
over here. Okay, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, The Untold Story. And anybody can get that anywhere. It's Chocolate World, the museum there. You can get it at Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, any online bookstore that's available. You can even get it on eBay. Okay. And so, he took in, a lot of different business. I forget where I kind of lost track there when I started going off on the book.
You
Was
were
I?
talking about how you were the youngest of the youngest and decided to write a book, and then the Hershey.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wrote the book, and it's kind of a double-edged sword because when you write something like that, you got to be factual because Hershey is not going to put up with you writing something that's not accurately true. And likewise, my family members would assassinate me if I didn't, do a good job writing the book. So I kept it very factual. I told the stories. I didn't put any real dirt in there. Heck, I could have made that book 2 inches, 3 inches thick, right? But what I decided was is to make the book kind of for the young audience, something that a kid could read in 2 to 4 hours, sit down, or someone could get it and take it on an airplane and read it while they're flying from point A to point B. And so that was the things I did. 178 family members before me, and not a single one of them wrote a
Crazy.
book. Took the youngest one to do it.
Yeah.
Now, I was smart about how I did it because I took over the family reunions. And I said to everybody, I said, listen, if you guys want, I'm the technical one of the family, the youngest and the most technical, astute, how to do everything. And so I had them bring in all their pictures. I scanned them all and I put them all in a repository. And then I put them all on CD and I gave them back to everybody. So now everybody had all the pictures from the family of what everybody had. Because otherwise, you had 178 family members, and each family member had their own little version of stories that nobody else would ever know about. But by gathering up all the photographs, I pulled that all together. People back in the old days, they would send out Christmas cards and they would have all the children and have little quips in there and things they would say about Christmas and the holidays and all those kinds of things. And so to kind of put that book together was fun to do. My next thing here is to start maybe doing some movies. There's a lot of people who put movies out, but they're not factual. They'll make statements, things like they'll say that the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups was made in my grandfather's basement. No, they weren't. They weren't made in the basement. He made mints in the basement when they were at 18 East Ariba Street. They had a house, 1,800 square foot house, and they at the time they had 11 kids, uh, grandfather, my grandmother, her sister, and two boarders, all in this house, 1,800 square foot. That's a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So in 1926, they built that house over on 203, 205 Caracas Avenue. And my father ended up being born in that house, which is kind of cool. So, that's a lot of people to grow up, a lot of mouths to feed. Uh, my grandfather died in 56. He kind of left the business to his sons. The eldest son, Robert Reese, uh, when my grandfather came up to Hershey, my uncle Robert, he went to work at the train station down in Muddy Creek's Forks area down there. There was actually a different city that where they had this station at. He did telegraph, he would box things up and whatnot. But he stayed working for his grandfather at the time and didn't come work for HB Reese till 1937.
Mm.
That's quite a ways down the road. But he ended up becoming the chairman of the board, the chairman, all that stuff after my grandfather died. But you figure some of these kids, like I said, my Uncle John, he dropped out of school from sixth grade
Wow.
and started working in the business. And so by 1963, you figure that was a lot of people uh, to be in there, right? Working, doing all that stuff. So they were kind of thinking, hey, we'd probably like to retire now if possible after a 40-year career of working in the factory and doing the things that they did. They decided to quit and do a merger. They did that stock for stock merger. Um, if you look back on today, would you do it today? Probably not, right? Hindsight, you don't sell the goose that lays the golden eggs. Uh, but at least Hershey has done a good job of keeping it in the top level of sales and so forth in the business. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there any involvement, from you guys kind of after that? I know you mentioned one of your relatives and like, what do you think the future of the brand looks like in general?
Well, I would say that the Reese's brand is probably the number one brand
Yeah.
for Hershey. Only Hershey can really tell you what their numbers are. It's their numbers. but I mean, you can see it, the sales and everything. You look at the number
Incredible.
one candy bars from all the ratings and everything. The Reese's Peanut Butter Cup is number one. It used to be Reese's was really only sold here in the United States. You know, Hershey tried to take it to other countries. They tried to use the Hershey brand name. It didn't go over. They maybe modified the name from Reese's to Reese Peanut Butter Cups up in Canada, as an example.
Mhm.
Uh, but now they're selling it over in India, they're selling it in the UK, and it's taken off. They're selling it in Nepal. You got all these different places, and everybody's heard about it, right? So that everybody wants to try it. And of course, it's got that icon color. You
Yep.
know, not only do I mean, you think about all the memorabilia. You know, here's a little mouse pad, but I've got bags. I've got all kinds of stuff.
I love the
Oh,
shirt.
you love the shirt? Hold on.
Wow. That's wild.
You gotta love the guitar. And I'll also just kind of point out, you look over my shoulder here, all right? Like if I like this,
Mhm.
this is the plaque where my grandfather was inducted into the Candy Hall of Fame
Wow.
as an industry pioneer. So just over here is a picture of my grandfather, and of course, behind every great man is a great woman, my grandma Edna Heisen. And of course, this is just one room. I've got rooms that are just packed with memorabilia. I've got a Christmas tree already set up in the other room, and it's got Reese's ornaments all over it. And I kind of joke to people, I say, see, money does grow on trees. But anyway, it's kind of cute.
So what's next for you now personally? Like, what do you want to do? What's your focus at this point?
Uh, well, I'd like to come out with a movie. It's probably one thing that I would do. My brother, he likes to go out and do uh, oh, what a championing, brand champions go out there and just kind of tout the ambassadors. That would be the
Mhm.
thing. I just plan on being an ambassador for the brand. Not that Hershey has asked me or my brother to be brand ambassadors, but it's our family. It's our family name, our family legacy. Of
Mhm.
course, we're ambassadors. You can't you can't take away from us that we're the grandchildren, right? And there's only five of the kids that have the Reese name.
Really?
Yeah, out of all those 178 some odd family members, there might be some new kids that have been born and stuff like that that will carry on the name as well. But from the second generation, there was five of us that had the Reese name. My brother and myself are two of those five. So there's three other people.
That's it.
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't realize there were so few.
Yeah, it's not a lot. I mean, a lot of people are family members, obviously, but they don't have the Reese name.
Mhm.
Maybe they got remarried. Uh, some of them didn't have kids. Some did. Some have passed away over the years. It's a lot of people. Funny thing it is when you see the one picture from 1928 of my grandfather holding my dad on his lap, you've got the other kids standing behind them, and they're full grown adults, 28 years old, 27, 28 years old, standing behind them.
Wow.
That's, to me, it's just kind of mind blowing to kind of see that. I'll tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see here. Share. Okay, you can see my screen.
Yep.
Peanut butter cups.
Hmm.
All right. So what I was going to show you here is just some pictures I was telling you about the family photo from 1928. Let's see how this comes up. There we go. So this little guy is sitting on my grandfather. This is H.B. Reese. It's my grandmother, Blanche Edna Heisen. Uh, this is my father, Charles Richard Reese, and his twin brother, William, who died at 8 months old. So this was an advertisement, put into an advertisement in 1933. Now, let's see here if I can actually bring up the advertisement.
Wow, that's the photo, huh?
Yeah, that's the photo in the advertisement
All
from
in
that
one
time frame.
house, 1,800 square feet.
Yeah, well, there were 11 kids at the time when they were in that particular house. So my father was born in the 203, 205 Caracas Avenue, which is a different house. Um, so they had 11 kids at the time when they were over on the Arriba Street, 18 East Arriba Street was the address. But that's kind of cool. And that same time frame that you were just looking at there for that advertisement was when they took this picture. This is around 1935, actually. This is a couple years later. This is when he burned his mortgages. So he finally had enough money coming in that he could afford to buy a fishing lodge down in Wichita, Virginia.
Mm.
And any of these employees that you see here could go down to Wichita and stay there.
Mm.
All it cost them was $1 to stay there.
Wow.
But that included all the food and use of the boat and everything. And so we even had a cook there that would cook the food for them. So that was kind of cool. It's a good little perk
Mm.
for a business, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I do have pictures of that boat and that, yeah. So we'll do this like here. I'll slide this over so you can see the house right here. This was the house they made for the fishing lodge. This was in Wichita, and of course there was a boat that we had a fishing boat. So here's a fishing boat that everybody would go on.
Mhm.
And they would get so many people on this boat that they would end up pulling a dinghy behind it and have other people on the additional boat that would go behind it. And
Mm.
they'd go out there and go fishing. So I told you, they built the house in 1926.
Yeah.
And so here's a picture of my father out in front of the factory in 1926. This is the factory on the left, and that's my father pulling a little airplane along. Um, let's see here. This was the house that he was born in. This is down in Muddy Creek Forks. He was actually born back here just to the left of the chimney in a room up on this floor right here. He was born in that room right there. And it was really kind of cool. I don't know if you can really see it, but they got the little slits in the wall, little turret things, for they can stick a gun through there
Wow.
to fend off invaders and so forth.
Mm.
But also supported air breeze and all that kind of stuff. But they had over here next to this tree, they had a freshwater spring that would come up and go through the inside of that house. Now that's pretty cool to
Mm.
have a freshwater spring in there.
Yeah.
And let's see here. Here I got some pictures of the factory being built. This is the factory over on Reese Avenue. And so my grandfather, while he got all this started, he actually never got to see it finish the construction. He died uh, just prior to it being finished. But back in the day, the Reese's, they had the longest single line assembly line, 90,000 square foot assembly line
Wow.
for Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. And you can see everybody, how they all got the bobby socks and the
This is awesome.
white uniforms and everything. I think that was kind of cool. And we had a candy cook, is Ralph Smith, is this fellow right here. And uh, this fellow you see right here is the same guy that we see here with my father at the time. There's Ralph Smith with my father. And here's my Aunt Rose right here. And here's the 11 kids that were over at that Arriba Street address. So you can see it wasn't 16, but there's still quite a bit.
Mm.
And if we were to go back, look later down the road, this is 1976. My father is over on the left. He's got his brothers were still all alive here, and three of the girls were still alive at the time. And going way back, my grandfather used to play in some local bands. He played the French horn. It's kind of cool.
French horn.
Yeah. And here's another couple more pictures looking inside the factory. All these pictures. Let me open it up. It's kind of interesting. Let me zoom in. Let's see here. So there's my grandfather in the background. So over on this side, I think there's some more pictures in here. Let me see if it allows me to show more pictures. Yeah, by the way, down where his house is at there in Muddy Creek Forks, um, this is my family members, over 10,000 descendants.
Wow.
That was that was put in place in 56. So that's kind of cool.
10,000.
10,000. Yeah. So I've got a thing with all the family photos. You can see a picture of me standing there. This is in Chocolate World,
Mm.
and they're selling my book there. Uh, it's quite amazing that they sold the number of books that they sold.
Yeah.
Of course, I've lost a little bit of weight since then.
Yeah.
No,
That's
there's
great.
my brother, Brad, you've seen.
Yeah.
This is the 18 East Ariba Street address. So this was the house that I was talking about,
Right.
18. Yeah. So anyway, a lot of interesting pictures.
Yeah.
Here's the book being sold over at the Hershey Museum. Um, anyway,
Pretty incredible family history.
yeah, I've got a lot of things I've kind of put together. So this is, I have what's called the rights of publicity. So I own 100% of everything that deals with anything with HB Reese. So I had that all legally done, uh, set up. Let me see here if I can move this out of the way. So here's the actual merger document.
Wow.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So this was
July of 1963.
1963, July 2nd. Okay. So this is where they cemented everything. And, I came across this. I was going through some old files that were not at the Hershey archive, but it was over at another Hershey. It was like a museum of some sort, or archaeology facility that they had.
Mm.
And I was going through their things and I came across this. And I'm like, my gosh, they don't even know they got this. This is the actual agreement for
Wow.
the for the stock for stock merger. And so it goes through and it talks about all the stuff on there. And, we were talking just briefly about the stock. You see here back in 63, the shares, it split, and then it split again, 3 for 1, 2 for 1, 2 for 1. This is going back to 2004, and I'm sure it split again. Um, Here showing like 16 million shares of Reese's stock, and who knows what it is now. Probably good 4 billion, $5 billion worth of stock.
It's still held by you guys?
Not by me. Uh, I'm sure someone's got portions of it still. Who knows what they got? You know how it is. Uh, Things go in and out, right? Of the
Mm.
family. And then, of course, I have little presentations and stuff I do here where I kind of take people through, show them. This is a kind of a cool picture right here. basically I'm walking into a press conference for the induction of my grandfather into the Candy Hall of Fame. So
That's
it's the
great.
press conference, and they got all the press people there. And I'm walking in, I've got the peanut butter color shirt on with the Reese orange, and I say world's greatest inventors, Franklin, Edison, and this Reese guy.
That's too good.
Yeah. And so then I got the picture of HB and my grandmother, got to find chocolates, and I talk about this photograph, and then I go in and I kind of call out who's who from 1928. When I wrote the book, I dedicated to my father. This is my father when we did the merger in 1963. This is
Mhm.
when he was a lot older. Here's the book, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, The Untold Story. My wife and I are there. Here we're up accepting his induction into the Candy Hall of Fame. And of course, you got life always tastes sweeter with a little Reese's. All right. But I kind of go in, if you think about all the memorabilia and all the stuff I have, I've got all these cars here. I'm kind of showing Kevin Havoc racing car. Of course, with that, you got to have the car keys. You got people who have various cars that exist out there, just a few cars that have the Reese logo. And of course, you had Elvis Presley liked the peanut butter cups with bananas. So you had the banana Reese's peanut butter cup. And then, of course, everybody wants us to sponsor their various racing cars, whether it be NASCAR or Indy or whatnot. So we have people who send us things, hey, if you sponsor this, this is what it would look like. Delivery would look like this. And of course, you got places where they got the Hershey Chocolate World stores. This particular one is filled with all kinds of Reese's in there. It's like going into Reese heaven, right?
Yep, I've been there.
But just seeing some of the Reese memorabilia, you got I Love Reese's Day, you got the little whippets there, you got the sneakers, the big pies, the umbrellas, Reese's perfume, you got scratch offs, stockings.
It's amazing.
You've got it all. This was a room I put together for my father when he would come visit. He would stay in the Reese's room. Uh, Here is one of my rooms. Here's that tree. See, money does
Yeah.
grow on trees. It's filled with all kinds of Reese's ornaments and whatnot. And I'm into martial arts. So yeah, they call me the Candy Man, but they don't call me the Candy Man because of the Reese thing. They call me Candy Man because I try to help people learn the martial arts by acquainting the movements. The movements remind me of various candy bars. Not trying to use their name by calling it after the name of their candy bar because that would be copyright infringement or branding, whatever. But it reminds me of like the Butterfinger.
Mm.
Here's one: the Good and Plenty, the Payday, the Fast Break, things like that. But I had a lot of fun over the years. But I had a school actually over in Hummelstown, Pennsylvania. As you can see here, this was the
Nice.
school, and I taught self-defense. But I used to teach up at Muhammad Ali's training camp quite a bit. There's my wife. Got her to black belt as well. And of course, the family has a lot of fun. You get a lot of cool things. A lot of people are into it. This is the guy called the Reese guy, but you got the music speakers. You got people who paint their fingernails. This is Ricky Jackson. A little bit of relationship there to the Jackson family, as well as Jackson Brown, uh, James Brown, excuse me. So you see this little dress on the doll? Well, I actually had that dress in full human size, and I
Wow.
had sent it to Riki, and so she got to wear it to a party that she went to with 50 Cent. Uh, so it's the standard, right? Peanut butter and chocolate, not chocolate and peanut butter, but peanut butter and chocolate. Get that straight. Everybody loves the peanuts. And of course, here's three generations. Got myself, my father, and my son, Christopher. And then he built up in Niagara Falls, he built what's called a Skylon Tower. And the top of that tower is in the shape of a peanut butter cup, which is kind of cool. This is actually a pretty famous picture because if you notice, the falls is turned off.
Mm.
Yeah. Versus when it's turned on, it looks something like this, right? And you can see the shape that they used to form that. I did just about every job you can think of in that building, including being a security guard. I used to watch people steal, and I'd look through the ventilation ducts and watch them take things. And then I ended up being a bodyguard for people that came into the concert hall. We had a little concert facility inside the building. And so I did bodyguard work for Tiny Tim, Checkers, Platters, Stampeders, and stuff like that, kind of watch over them when they came in to do their things. We had a nice little house up there. This house, when we bought it, was originally a barn, and we ended up modifying it. It's about 35,000 square foot. It's a big improvement from the house that my grandfather was actually born in. He was born in this room right here.
Mm.
And I told you that he had dairy operations. This was his dairy operations in that old barn.
Mhm.
And it looked like this right here. So here's the inside where all the dairy operations were at. And they had this river. If I go up here, you can see there's a little river that goes up and down. And they have these fishing tournaments. And so everybody comes out. This is our land. But they would come out there and we'd have fishing tournaments. But we had a smokehouse. We would smoke the meats and everything. And my grandfather used to raise frogs. He'd sell frog legs to all the restaurants.
Ah,
So I mentioned that in my book, and lo and behold, shortly thereafter, the chocolate world started selling these little frogs for Reese's up at the chocolate thing. The only way they would have known that is by reading my book. So I know where they got that information from. But this is the old train station in Muddy Creek Forks that HB used to go down, hop on the train, and go up to Hershey. Well, he'd ride it up to Harrisburg, and then he would take a trolley from Harrisburg out to Hershey. And here's the inside of it. You had your post office. And of course, if you're buying tickets, you make sure you don't spit anywhere. People like to keep it clean. Here's 1903. This is HB Reese, the taller one,
mhm.
the local child in the area. This is that first job he had was with Milton Hershey at the dairy barn called 28A. So that's the actual barn. Here's the actual round barn. And I think one of our aunts was born there. Frances was born there at that facility. And then this was the house they built in 1926. This was the house that my father was born. And this ended up being a factory. They ended up putting some additions onto it. And so we looked at some of these pictures, showed you that one. Uh, right here, you can see my grandfather sitting back here. That wall that they're standing next to is the one where I pulled that burlap bag out of, was in that wall. And so it's kind of cool to see him standing right where that was at. But they would make the candies. All the women would sit out here. They'd take and make there's like 28 some odd candy bars that they would make these little Christmas gift packs and so forth that they would sell in the stores. Here you see them all lined up, kind of putting things in. You saw them packaging. We talked about the Wichapre facility. We talked about the boat.
Mhm.
Here's that dinghy, but you can see people fishing behind, all the fish that they would catch down the road. My brother and I went up there, and it's actually the Virginia Institute for Marine Science called VIMS,
Mm.
VIMS. And so they ended up making this into what was our fishing lodge. They made it into a dormitory for some of the marine science students.
Wow.
But that has since been torn down. They've finally tore that down. But in the 1950s, he ended up buying this lot over here, and then he started to build that factory that he has there today. Of course, they've just finished building some additional factory space. But it's kind of cool to kind of go back in the old days and look at some of the old signs. There's my Uncle John. I told you he's the one that bopped out of school in sixth grade to go
Right.
work for my grandfather, right? So you got to give that guy a lot of credit for what he did. And of course, this is when my grandfather passed away. So a little write up about him, a little obituary and different things. Here's the factory when it was completed, November 30th, 1957. My grandfather died in 56, November timeframe. And so it's kind of cool to kind of look at, when they opened up
Yeah.
the plant, the largest plant, you see they had bands in there. Uh, you had all the boys. My father is over here on the left, or excuse me, on the far right. And then you had all the girls at the time. And of course, my grandmother, you don't realize it, but she's blind, right?
Mm.
That's why she's kind of got that blank stare. She
Yeah.
can't see. And not that she was blind her whole life, but at that time in life, she was blind. And here's Ralph Smith kind of mixing up the roasted peanuts. The people up here kind of looking at stuff. You have the mixers and so forth. And remember, I was telling you about the rejects or
Yeah.
the Reese's that would be in those bread pan. There's the bread pan things that I was talking about. Look
That's
how big
great.
they are.
Yeah. Huge.
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, you got the machines kind of putting everything all together. Of course, you can go out on YouTube and you can see some more recent stuff, but what I'm showing is what it was like when my grandfather was running the business, right?
Mhm.
And of course, today you wouldn't see all these people walking around because you have to have all the attire on to prevent any contamination from hair, facial hair, various things that would pop up there. But it's kind of cute to see some of these people dress up in Halloween costumes.
Of course.
Yeah, so that place where I found that the merger agreement was at the Hershey Dairy Township Historical Society. That's where it was.
Ah,
Okay.
amazing.
Matter of fact, I think it was just after this event occurred that I came across it. And this is a guy that looks like Milton Hershey.
Yeah.
And then what's kind of cool here is this cool little video. Um, I'm not going to play it because it's his copyright, but you can go out there and look up the Reese guy, and he's got all these videos. This one's like a trick or treat one, but he's got stuff on Christmas and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of cute.
Amazing.
So anyway.